Welcome to Alpha Kappa Psi's webinar titled Optimize Your Resume to Kickstart Your Career. This webinar is part of the Professional Development Series. My name is Mackenzie Lauka, and I serve AK Psi as the Associate Director of Education. I'll be your moderator today. Before we begin, I would like to go over a few logistics regarding the audio and web-based features of today's program. In order to verify attendance, you should have linked to the GoToWebinar meeting room through the web link provided in your confirmation email. To access the PowerPoint handout, as well as the supplemental documents available, click the plus sign next to Handouts on your screen. Click the name of the handout to download the file. This webinar will be advanced remotely. At the end of the program, I'll explain how you can ask a question to any of our panelists. If you have a question throughout the program, feel free to type it into the question box on your screen or tweet it using the hashtag AKPsiChat. Your questions will be asked at the end of the program. Be sure to check out our social media content. Portions of today's program will be tweeted using the hashtag AKPsiChat. You may also find some valuable resources on the AK Psi blog, Facebook page, Instagram feed, LinkedIn page, Twitter feed, and our YouTube channel. Resumes are a necessary part of the job search process, but it won't get you very far if it doesn't accurately depict your abilities. Creating a resume you can be proud of, however, doesn't have to be stressful. Sharing their knowledge and experience, two faculty members from the University of Michigan Dearborn will discuss the purpose of resumes, what to include, and how to maximize your efforts so your skills and abilities are seen by hiring managers. In addition to covering these topics, we'll leave time for your questions and comments on the subject matter. For our program today, we do have two presenters who are going to provide guidance and support while also provoking thoughts and awareness, so you walk away from today's program with new insight on the topic. At this point, I'd like to introduce our presenters. Mike Callahan is Director for the College of Business's Internship and Career Planning and Development Program at the University of Michigan Dearborn. In this role, he works with employers to develop challenging internship and job placement opportunities for graduate and undergraduate students in the College of Business, and then works with the students to help them develop the skills and knowledge, track record, and relationship skills necessary to help them launch viable careers. He's also on the adjunct faculty team at the University of Michigan Dearborn and teaches career planning and development courses in the College of Business. Mike has been in this position since July of 2005. Tueri Wheeler is the Career Placement Program Manager in the College of Business and the Simplicity Career Connections Administrator for the University of Michigan Dearborn. Tueri works with the students in the College of Business to help them find fulfilling careers post-graduation. She also helps to ensure that the university's job posting board runs smoothly and is a resource for all students for any type of position. Tueri is also an adjunct professor for the Career Planning and Development course in the College of Business. She's been in her position since August of 2014. Now to get started with the position, I'll hand it off to Mike and Tueri.
Thanks, Mackenzie. That was a nice introduction, and I know I'm speaking for both Tueri and myself that we're thrilled to have the opportunity to present and talk about this very important topic. I wanted to kick it off, this whole slide about purpose of the resume, and there was a little feedback, but that went away, so I guess we're okay here. I want you to think about this from the perspective that it's not just a matter of listing a bunch of stuff that you've done and then putting your resume out there and hoping somebody gives you a job, but rather think about it from the perspective of what's important to me, what do I want to do, how am I going to explore my passion, how do I create this entrepreneurial mindset and figure out I need to be marketing myself. It's as though you were creating a flyer. Say you're going to go into business and you're going to be selling fences, and you're going to create a flyer of the kinds of fences that you sell. You wouldn't do that. Just go. Let's just create some flyers here. It could be brick fences. They could be chain link fences. They could be barbed wire fences. They could be big fences, little fences, etc. House fences, white picket fences, etc. You'd go out and you'd talk to the customers. You'd identify potential markets. You'd do some informational interviews. You'd figure out what is the kind of fence that would really be good for you. You might be really good at making wood fences, but really poor at making barbed wire fences, for instance, to make it real simple. So part of this, I want you to be thinking about it in terms of really understanding what you want to do, going into the market, doing informational interviews, talking to people, figuring out what your brand is, looking for the underserved need, and then the resume comes. Resume is crucial in the process, but it's not the first thing you do. It's toward the end of what you do. So that's kind of the idea here. So accept that concept, if you will, for the period of this presentation, and we'll talk a little bit more about it at the end. But I think it's really important that you start from that kind of perspective. Now, the idea, you know, that if you're just sending your resume out to want ads, the hit rate on that is only 5 or 10%. You can do it. It's not going to hurt, but you want to be making connections. You want to be networking. You want to be using the resume more as a follow-up or to supplement the one-on-one contact. We had a group of recruiters come to campus last week getting ready for our accounting job fair, and we were talking about resumes with them, and they're saying they take the resume, it's good, but they want to understand the contact. They want to understand the student. They want to talk to the student. So your resume's got to be flawless. It's got to be tight. It's got to be sharp, but it's not going to totally stand on its own. You've got to figure out a way to be making that connection through going to job fairs or doing networking or doing informational interviews or somehow making connections with people. One of the problems with resumes is that recruiters, they take 6 seconds to read your resume. So I know sometimes students will, you know, they want to have 2 or 3 page resumes because they want to put everything, they got a lot of good stuff, and they want to put all that on the resume, but if you're only going to take 6 seconds to read it, you don't need 3 pages. You ought to be able to try to get it into 1 page, and it's telling your story, not just listing what you've done. What's your story? And you got to know what your story is. You got to know what you want people to think about you before you start writing the resume. So take some time to prep for that. And that's not 25 things. That's a couple, 2 or 3 things that you're really good. You're really good at problem solving. You're really good at attention to detail. You're good at leadership. You're good at whatever it is. Those key things that you want people to know about you, and then be sure that you build that into the resume. So we're going to continue with the process here, and I'm going to lateral it to Tweri in a second. But the point, again, is just give some time, take some time, write down what you want people to know about you. And then when you're building the resume, go back to that list of what you want people to know about you and make sure you're telling your story. Okay? So, Tweri, take it away.
Okay. Well, once you have the context of what you want to portray, what you want to get out there to the market, some of the things to include in the actual resume. In the class that both Mike and I teach, we tell our students there are really 4 basic things that you need to have in your resume. First is your biographical data, so your name, your email, and your phone number. Right now, it is not necessary to have your personal address. We'll talk about that a little bit later, but really just your name, your email, and a phone number. Next, your education, and particularly for students, where education is going to probably be at the top of the list of importance because your education at this point will probably be more relevant than your experience. We want your education to come next. So listing where you went to school, what your degree, or expected graduation date, all that is important. Next, any relevant experience. So your work experience, your volunteer experience, any type of work experience, we want to have that listed as relevant experience. And with that, you want to start with action verbs, each bullet point starts with an action verb and it lists the outcomes. After that, we want to go into hard skills. So that includes things like computer skills or languages, things that are actual hard skills, not necessarily soft skills like I can communicate well or work well in a team. Those are things that we actually want you to show in your experience. So those are things that should be demonstrated through the bullet points of your experience. Some things to keep in mind. Keep it to 1 page. Both Mike and I have over 20 years experience, and both of us have a one-page resume. It is not necessary to list everything that you've ever done, but the really important things you can get on one page. Start from the most important at the top and go down. So list those things that are most important right up front. Another thing, particularly for students, putting down your student organizations and putting down roles that you have within those organizations. If you took a leadership role, if you were involved in organizing different activities, all of those are very important. Also, volunteer work and internships. A lot of students ask, should we include volunteer work or an internship, whether I was paid or unpaid? Those are all still relevant work experiences. Whether you were paid or not, we still want you to list things that show what it is you're trying to demonstrate, whether it was volunteer or an internship. Some things that we want to go to on what not to include. One of the things that we get most of the time is, why is there no objective statement on the resume template that we use? We do not encourage our students to use an objective statement. An objective statement really is about you putting out what you want from a company or a position. In reality, what you should be trying to demonstrate is the value that you bring to someone else. So that is where your education, your relevant experience is all a demonstration of that. Not so much that I want a job as a financial analyst in an up and growing company. That's what you want. What you want to portray is your value. Another thing that is not necessary in a resume is to put references will be provided. Most of us know that if a company asks you for references, you will provide them. And so a lot of times it's just not necessary to kind of state the obvious, particularly when we're trying to only list the most important things on that one page. Also, everything that you did at a job is not necessary to put down in the bullet points underneath that job. You really want to put the things that were relevant, that demonstrate some of the soft skills that you're trying to communicate, the things that are most important, not every single thing that you did at a job. That's where a lot of students tend to get hung up on trying to make their resume concise and keeping it to the one page. If you really work hard at keeping it to that one page, it forces you to only include the things that are really important. And lastly, including your personal address is not as necessary as it may have been years ago when people actually used snail mail in order to send out resumes. At this point, with the fact that most people are using email, it is not necessary to put down your personal address. And also with your GPA, that is one of the things that a lot of students will ask us about, should I include my GPA? We say yes, and for the reasons that if a company cares about your GPA, they're going to care, and they're going to ask, why isn't it on here? And they may end up even restricting your resume because you don't have it on there. And if a company doesn't care what your GPA is, then it won't really matter if you put it on there. Obviously, there are students that will ask us, if I have a really low GPA, should I still include it? In those situations, it can be an individual situation, but certainly we want you to include your GPA. It actually goes along with your track record. It shows something that you have done in the past and how you have demonstrated your work ethic. For some students, it may actually be a good idea to break out your major GPA. With a recent accounting career fair that we had a number of employers come in and actually tell some of the students, well, if your accounting GPA is higher than your overall GPA, perhaps breaking out your accounting GPA and showing that that GPA in and of itself is a 3.5, where your overall might be a 3.1, that actually demonstrates that you do have a really high aptitude there in that particular major. So keep that in mind. And now we'll move on to an actual template that we use here at the University of Michigan Dearborn for our students. As you can see at the top, we just include the name, phone number, and email. Again, your physical address is not necessary. We go into your education, listing the degree that you get, along with your major, the expected graduation date, and again, that GPA. As you will see on this resume template, we include relevant courses. That is actually for students typically that are still in school and perhaps using this resume in order to get an internship. We use that to show particular companies or organizations that you have already taken classes that are relevant to a particular internship opportunity. So for example, if you were trying to get an internship with an accounting firm, you would at least be able to show here that you may have taken cost accounting or audit or tax accounting or different things like that. The closer you are to graduation, or particularly at graduation or after graduation, the relevant courses section is not really necessary because we understand that you have taken all the classes in order to graduate. After that, you can list another university or college that you may have attended. And in this particular template, we also give the opportunity for academic projects. This is a place where students have the opportunity to be able to demonstrate relevant experience that they have in a particular subject that may not have been with regard to work. So if you, again, are an accounting major and you had a particularly intense academic project in accounting, you can put that here. Or in this case, the very first bullet point where it talks about marketing campaign, if you were a marketing student, you can highlight something like that. Then we move into experience, where this particular student has listed 3 separate jobs, each with about 3 or 4 bullet points. So as you can see, we fit a lot into this one page, and you were able to give a lot of examples with regard to work experience. Each of the bullet points should start off with an action verb, something that you did, you managed, interacted, prepared, conducted, something that is an action verb, along with who you did that action for, or what the purpose of that action was for, and then what the outcome was. So if you look at the second bullet point of the first job, manage complaints and customer discrepancies and confer with sales managers in order to resolve problems leading to increased customer satisfaction. As you can see, that particular bullet point talks about what you did, who you did it for, and what the outcome was. So think about those things as you're putting down your bullet points. And then at the end, you can see that we listed computer skills, proficient in different software skills, a language, and we were even able to fit in some activities, which may or may not be relevant for each of you. But again, this is a one-page resume, and we were able to convey quite a few things in this one page. So I will throw it back to Mike to talk about some other things that you can include in your resume.
Thanks, Tori. So when you're looking at that and looking at that resume, and obviously we have a lot of time to develop that resume and come up with the perfect person and the perfect list of skills and all. But to reiterate what Tori said there, think about the action verb. And again, if it's in the current job, it's generally present tense. If it's in a past job, it's past tense. So be sure you're paying attention to the grammar. But you want to try to quantify those things if you can. And if you don't have real good stuff right now, you need to go get some. You need to get some good experiences. And again, it goes back to the thing that I started at the beginning saying, what do I want people to know about me? What is my strength? What do I love to do, and what's the opportunity? So maybe, yeah, you can certainly join. You're all in AKPsi. Wonderful. Take advantage of the phenomenal opportunities that are in AKPsi to build your track record in those areas that you want to communicate that's your value. It might be leadership, so you should be in a board position or taking lead in a project, a major project with your chapter. Do the kinds of things that you need to build your track record that are consistent with what you want people to know about you. You know, I had a student when I first got into this position came and talked to me, and he had Golden Key, as a member of Golden Key. And I said, well, why do you want that? He said, well, they told me it would look good on my resume. It's like, huh? No, it only looks good on your resume if it contributes to your track record and your skills and knowledge and your relationships in order to make you more marketable. So take advantage of student organizations. Phenomenal opportunity is why I'm such a strong advocate of AKSI and why we support it here so aggressively, and I know you guys are all part of it. Take advantage of those opportunities and do the kinds of things that are going to help you become more valuable to your employer. Same thing with volunteer work that's outside of the student organizations. Certainly, there's times when you need to go paint a fence or plant trees or help build houses or whatever in the community, and those are outstanding, very important social activities. I'm not trying to minimize those, but when you're doing those, maybe you got a chance to organize the people that are doing the tree planting or the fence painting. Maybe you've got a chance to put together a marketing communication about what you just did on that volunteer. You know, maybe you write a web page update for the chapter. It's not being selfish, but do the things that you do with an eye toward increasing your value. It's okay. You can serve people in the community and have a phenomenal impact, and at the same time further your personal skill and track record. So look for those kind of opportunities. Unpaid internships. There's sometimes people want to hire students and put them into unpaid internships because they don't know what they want to do with them and they're just going to use them as free labor. Be careful. There are really good unpaid internships, especially in the nonprofit sector, that are legitimate, viable internship experiences. They're just set up where they can't afford you, but it still makes sense to take advantage of those. If you have that kind of an opportunity, again, look at it from the perspective of how does this increase my personal value proposition? If I'm going to be doing this unpaid internship and I want people to know about how good I do market research, am I going to be doing that kind of work? So look for that kind of related opportunity. And then project related, whether it's through student orgs, through your schools, even through employers. You know, you can reach out to, when you're doing informational interviews and connecting with employers, and find projects that they might be interested in you helping out with. And maybe you just do it on a temporary part-time basis to get in there and get your feet wet, so to speak, and your hands dirty and all that kind of stuff, but to build, again, the experiences and take advantage of those opportunities. So bottom line, how do you gain the skills? You can get them. 10, 15 years ago, I left EDS. I was working with them for 25 years. I needed to get into a project management kind of job. I went and volunteered to develop a training program for the local PMI chapter, and it was a year-long project. And it opened up a ton of doors for me. Wasn't getting paid for it, but I was building that track record and those relationships. So there's lots of opportunities you can do. The other thing to consider is professional organizations. Like I mentioned about PMI, if you're interested in project management, check out the local project PMI chapter in your city. AMA, Society of Automotive Engineers, SHRM, every professional organization, every profession has some kind of professional organization that you might be able to get plugged into. And generally, as a student, it's going to cost you less money. And raise your hand and say, hey, I'll take the responsibility for that project, and go make it happen. And again, make sure that it's contributing to your value proposition. But lots of opportunities like that can really build a strong track record and can really make you feel good and build your network. So take advantage of those kinds of opportunities. The next thing that we want to talk about is here we go. Couple of things. The triangle on the right. Let me tell you a little bit about that in the history. 10 years ago, I was looking at. We were doing internships, and I was looking at the benefit, and just the obvious benefit. A student does an internship, they've got 2 or 3 job offers The ones that don't do internships are coming into my office a month before graduation in panic mode because they haven't done anything. And there's reasons why they don't. They're working hard. They got other things going on, and I understand there's challenges associated with that. But I wanted to get an understanding of what makes that internship special. And because they could be working as a waitress or parking cars or something, honorable work, absolutely nothing wrong with that. But I don't think that's an internship. That doesn't prepare them to launch their career. And I came to realize that there's three major things that happen when you go on an internship. One is you apply the skills and knowledge that you've been developing at your university. So it's building and strengthening. You're showing and demonstrating the kinds of stuff that you're learning in an applied experiential environment. The second piece of this is track. I spent, as I mentioned before, I was with EDS for 25 years and probably spent 15 of those in different kinds of hiring roles. And we would always, when we're interviewing students, we would always be saying, I was just reading something. Okay. What's the person's track record? What do they need? You know, what can they show us? How can they show what they've done? And so track record's important, and then relationships. So bottom line, you really want to pursue a strategy that's building the skills and knowledge, the track record, and relationships. This is also reinforced when you ask recruiters. The basic things they're trying to figure out are, can you do the work, which is the skill and knowledge? Will you do it when you come work for us, which is the track record? And how are you going to fit in our environment? That's the question. All the questions that recruiters are asking you, and you're asking them, can you do the work? Will you do it when you go to work for them? And are you going to fit in their environment? So that's the key thing to always keep in mind. So as you're going through all this stuff, anything you're doing, help it be sure, give it a checkpoint to say it's building skills and knowledge, track record, or the relationships. So it takes some time to really focus on a strategy that builds those three things. Now, the resume, this topic really is all about building a resume and the written format of that resume. But also recognize that you're part of telling a story. One of the things that I encourage students to do, there's a tool called Wordle, and it creates a word map, if you will, of a message. And it's free. Just go out to wordle.net. Take a paragraph and put it into Wordle and see what it creates as a result. And what it does is the words that are used most frequently are the ones that are larger in it and in the map. And I did it with the Gettysburg Address, which was pretty interesting, the outcome, because we know that's such a famous speech by Lincoln, and what was it? What was the key points and all? And you put that in Wordle, you get a word map that's focusing on nation is number one, and the preservation of the nation was most important, and dedicated people, and the pain and the suffering of the war and dead and the sacrifices that people made was so intense in that speech. Well, you get this Wordle, and it summarizes that, so it's kind of a cool deal. You can do the same thing with your resume. I had a student once, and I had him put his resume into Wordle, and before he did it, I say, what do you want people to know about you? And he said, I want to know that I'm a risk taker, and I'm adventurous, and I'm going to try lots of different things and all. I said, okay, let's see what your resume is telling you, the story. We put it into Wordle, and it came back and did not tell that story. It came back that he was a very good manager, attention to detail. I think it's Mike. Yeah, I'm reading messages here. Anyway, he's very much attention to detail and a real strong, good manager. And as it turned out, he wound up starting his own restaurant and now has 3 restaurants in the area. So he is still taking risks, but he's really good at paying attention to detail and management, and his restaurants are very successful. So it's a technique. You can scan it. You can give it to somebody and say, tell me the 3 things that this resume is saying to you. And if it's not telling your story, then you want to go back and rework it. I've had students that are changing their majors, and they're saying, I really want to get into marketing. We look at their resume, and it's all accounting. And it's like, you got to change this. You got to talk about the things that you've done that are consistent with where you want people to go. Because if I read this, I'm going to try to slot you into an accounting position. So I'm not talking about spin. I'm not talking about making anything up. I'm not talking about misrepresenting anything. But I'm talking about what is your story. And you take some time, understand what your story is, and then be sure it's consistent. It's got to be in the cover letter. It's got to be in your emails. It's got to be when you're talking interview. There's a whole other series of dialogue that we can have about interviews and behavioral interviewing techniques and different kinds of things you can do to communicate where you're at in that interview. That should reflect your brand, your story, who you are, what do you want people to know about you. If you really want people to know that you're a solid project manager, that's got to be in your emails, it's got to be in your letters, it's your brand, and so you want it to be consistent. When you're networking, when you go to a networking event, you should all have business cards. I know you probably do because you're all in AKSI and you're great networkers. But you want to have a business card, and one of the techniques I do is I put this triangle on the back of my business card. So when I meet somebody at an event, I give them my business card and whip it over, and I show them the triangle, and I got a little visual aid there. I can talk about what I do. You can have your logo. Maybe it's 3 lines and a dot or something. Whatever tells your story, have it as part. You might have a logo on your business card, or just be able to talk about it. When people say, well, tell me about yourself. That's the classic first question you get in an interview. Tell me about yourself. Well, somebody asked me that in an interview. I'm going to say I help students develop the skills and knowledge, track record, and relationships they need in order to launch their career. Oh, how do you do that? And then we start talking about it. So you want to have that brand, that image, and it's all part of telling your story. It should be in social media. You guys should all have LinkedIn profiles. I would love it if you went out and looked at mine and give me feedback, because if my LinkedIn profile is not communicating that I'm all about helping people with careers and launch in helping students empower and develop their careers, then my brand isn't getting communicated effectively. So make sure yours is. There's some great tools out there to help you with social media to really make it strong, but you want it to be consistent. So use those tools. Think about using Wordle. Ask people to read your resume after you get it done. Be sure you know what you want it to say before. Think about how it's conveying the skills, knowledge, track record, relationships that you need in order to be successful. And make sure there's a consistent story, whether it's in your interviews or in networking, social media, everything that you're saying, orally, in written form, through electronics and all. So that's, I think, about all on that one. Nope, wrong way. There we go. So at the beginning, I showed you a model. And the model we've developed over the past several years. And it's built on the idea of being an entrepreneur of your career. And I'm not talking about go start your own business. That's great for maybe 5% of you. But you do need to think about your career as though you are an entrepreneur of your career. And a couple other words you can use besides entrepreneur, one that I just learned about, we were talking about it today with, or not earlier this week with somebody that came to the campus, but it's the idea of being a problem solver. If you're a problem solver, you're going to be valuable. So I want you to think about being an entrepreneur, being creative, being confident, and being a problem solver. And so this whole approach is based on that premise, and then things you can do to help further you along that path. So thinking like an entrepreneur, getting through, there's times when you're going to hit rough spots. and how do you get through those rough spots, and really understanding yourself and what's your brand and what are the opportunities that are out there, and how do you do informational interviews, and how do you do this stuff, and then how do you write the resume, and how do you write and develop the skills in interviewing and the skills in social media. We have a course out there that I've developed in conjunction with the folks at Heritage House, and it's going to launch in October 3rd, and it'll run for 4 weeks, and it's free. And since you guys are all in iInk, if you went to PBLI and picked up a copy of the book, you can use that, or you can get on the order, the AKSI order webpage and order a copy, and they'll send it to you. You've got to cover the mailing. I think it's $5, but that's the only cost associated with it. And the bottom line benefit that you're going to get out of it is, learning to market yourself and your personal value more effectively. So you can register at that link. I'm sure Mackenzie's going to be sending out more literature about it. You've got the PowerPoint here. But we've worked on this for a long time, and it's the whole idea that you can either approach your job by putting your resume out there and hoping somebody gives you a job, which is a 5% hit rate, or you can network and you can make connections and you can find the value that you bring and articulate that value. And the context for that is this idea of being an entrepreneur of your own career. Dick Bowles has written about this for many years in What Colors Your Parachute. He's got two columns that he talks about. And one is the way people do job searching. And generally it's focus on a resume and then maybe go to the want ads and maybe go to some agencies and that sort of thing. And the hit rate is so lousy. And the irony is that's not how jobs are filled. Jobs are filled by networking, by somebody asking somebody. When we just went through hiring somebody for my office, and the person we hired, it was somebody internally in the recommendation that from someone else, because they've seen them, they can demonstrate it, and that's how you wind up hiring people. So that's the way jobs get filled, and you got to learn how to play in that space. And I firmly believe that this whole approach and iInk will help you play in that space more effectively. So resumes are crucial. I hope you got some good understanding of what you want to put in them. Don't start with a resume. Start with who am I, what do I want people to know about, what are the opportunities I'm trying to go after, and then use the guidelines that we've said. Get it down to a page. And you're only going to get 6 seconds. And another thing is resumes don't get you a job, they get you to the next page. When a recruiter's looking at a resume, they're going through a stack of resumes, and they're looking for reasons not to hire you. A 3-page resume, unless it's a really technical job and they got to have a lot of specifics, they're going to say, this student doesn't know what they want. They're just trying to list a whole bunch of stuff and let me figure it out. So they're going to reject you. You know, a recruiter will take 100 resumes, whittle it down to 10, make some phone calls, whittle it down to 3 to get in front of the hiring manager to get one person hired. Your resume is going to get cut if it's not really crystal clear of why you're valuable for that company. That's why we want to say get rid of that objective statement. Be very clear in there about what you've done, why you've done it, what are the outcomes, and why that's valuable to that. The more you can do that, you're going to be successful. And you want to use the networking and all the other things available to you to help market yourself more effectively. So I think we're at the end of the content here.
We'll jump right on it. And thanks so much, Mike Tway, for all that. That was a lot of really great content. And like you said, it's going to wrap up the content portion of the program. So now we want to hear from all of you guys listening in, and the program is going to be open to your questions and comments at this time. As stated earlier, feel free to submit the questions via the questions box, or you can do it on Twitter using the hashtag AKSciChat. Questions are going to be asked in the order they're received, and be sure to introduce yourself with either your chapter, your college, or university when you include your question. So to get started off, we'll go with the first question we have here. And so that's, how do you kind of get that experience if you don't have any to begin with?
Tuari, how about you and I just trade back and forth unless
okay.
They specifically. It is so. There are so many opportunities to raise your hand, you know, and volunteer, whether it's through your chapter, through volunteer organizations, through professional organizations. You don't need, and you know, employers are going to say they need 3, 4, 5 years experience. Why they're saying that is they're after that track record side of the triangle. So you got to get your track record, and there are so many opportunities. There's so many good organizations that you can raise your hand, get involved, do something, and be documenting what you're doing so that you can truly add it to your repertoire of things and be able to talk about it. I did this, and here was the outcome. Outcomes are really important. I really want to emphasize that too. And when you're doing interviewing, it's the thing that gets missed. It's like, I did this, so what? What was the outcome? What's different because of what I did? So you always want to be able to talk about that. We increase profitability. There's 3 things that companies always look for. Did you change the financial structure? Did you increase revenue? Did you reduce expenses? Did you increase profit? The second piece they look at is, did you serve a customer? Is the customer delighted? Everybody needs a customer. I don't care if they're for-profit, not-for-profit, whoever they are, they're serving a customer. You want to demonstrate customer sensitivity and awareness. So volunteer to do some things where you're serving a customer and having an outcome. And then the third piece of that is, how do you work in a team? Teamwork's really important. They don't all need chiefs. We need some Indians. We need some folks that are part of the organization and strong team players and strong communicators and that sort of thing. So look for volunteer opportunities to do that. So you don't need to be hired. There's plenty of volunteer opportunities through your religious organizations, through your chapter, through professional organizations, where you can really get some good experience. And you get in those professional organizations, you can identify a great mentor that can kind of take you under his or her wing and really help you. And that's a great way to do it. And you get mentorship, obviously, through AK Psi, too. So rely on a mentor to do that. But raise your hand. And then one final thing about that is, when you say you're going to do something, do it. You know, it's absolutely the most important thing. I'm going to do it, then people can count on you. You're the go-to person. If you volunteer to do it and then don't get it done or don't follow through, that's obviously very, very damaging. So take advantage of those volunteer opportunities.
Great answer. Tweri, anything to add to that?
No, I think Mike handled that one.
You
get the next one.
Right.
The
next question we have is going to come from Heather at the University of Wyoming. She wants to know if either of you have heard of the Disney College Program, and if you have, whether or not you would recommend the experience for marketing majors.
Actually, I have heard of the Disney. I guess I can't go back and forth, but I'm hoping she's referring to the Disney internship program, and I will let her know that we have had a few students here that have gone through that program. It is a well-known and prestigious program, particularly for marketing and/or human resources. Disney is known for providing great customer service, for being a model of marketing, and so what we have heard about it, or what I know about it, is that is an excellent opportunity and it looks good on a resume. I'm sure that if you are going into marketing, something like that would allow you the opportunity to be able to gain some more experience and be able to put relevant work down that you did at that position that can certainly help you with any marketing position. So I don't know if you want to add anything, Mike, but
just to reiterate that, there's my understanding, there's kind of 2 levels. There's the more where you're part of you dress up like Mickey Mouse, or you're working in the counters and all that, and learning their system and how it works, and it's phenomenal to do that. And then they do take a few people for more advanced internships that come out of that feeder pool. I think the numbers are pretty high. I think they take like 1,000 people a year into the various parks, and then there's a few that do I'm sure it's more than a few, but then there's that feeder pool of more experienced folks that go into these further internships. But we support it. We've got a good relationship. There was a young woman who had done that, then did an internship actually with an accounting firm, and she was on our panel last week talking to students about how to get jobs, or how to market themselves. So it's a great way to learn about Disney's philosophy. Take advantage of it if you can.
Excellent. So next question we have comes from Amber, and she wants to know, how do you keep your resume from being passed up and overlooked by the hiring managers?
Well, the best thing that you can do is be doing your work before they're getting the resume. There's job fairs, there's networking opportunities. I would encourage you to be doing informational interviews. And what an informational interview is say you want to go to work for Ford in their finance department, then get on LinkedIn and find some alumni, find some between AK-Psi and the alumni of your schools, you guys got lots of contacts that you can reach out to. Go in and do informational interviews. And in informational interviews, you're not asking for a job, but you're asking them, what does it take to be successful in your environment? And you're learning what they're looking for. And maybe they're looking for, God, we really got to have people that are outstanding problem solvers and really good at communication and really good at project management. And I don't care if you're in marketing or accounting or finance, whatever, those kinds of skills are transferable. So you find that out from the people that are doing the hiring, and that's going to give you some great insight into what you ought to be putting in the resume. Because if you got a hiring manager saying, this is what we're looking for, and then you're working that into your resume, that's the point that's coming out, they're not going to overlook it because that's what they're looking for. So that's one way to do it. The other way is if you've made the connection. You meet somebody in an elevator, you impress them with your ability, and then when your resume is going to that recruiter, they're getting an email from a CEO or a senior manager that says, watch out for Heather. I want you, I met her at the networking event last week. You really need to keep an eye out for her. That makes a lot of things happen, and believe me, that happens all the time. If you're just going in cold, you haven't researched the company, you don't know what they're really looking for, you're just trying to list a bunch of stuff that you've done, it's going to be hard to get singled out. You got to do your marketing yourself. You got to know what the customer wants, and you got to, and there's ways to do that again through the informational interviews, and then it doesn't hurt to have somebody in the hiring position say, hey, keep an eye out for this resume when it comes through. Or the recruiter themselves. You've met them at a job fair. When you go to the job fairs, know about them. Don't just walk up to them and say, hey, you guys hiring, or what do you guys do? Talk to them about what they do and how you can be valuable and impress them. It takes 3 connections, 3 contact points before somebody's going to put your face with your name. So if you meet them at a job fair, follow up. Connect with them. Maybe you've got some things going on at school where you've got what we do here is hallway tables, and the employers are talking to the students in between classes. Invite the recruiter to come talk at your AK-Psi meeting. Make connections. It's networking, and you get those connections. You're going to stand a much better chance than just hoping your resume gets picked up. Hope that helps.
Perfect. Were anything to add to that? I think Mike covered that pretty well.
Yeah, I think he covered that one.
All right. The next question we have is, we know that during the presentation you guys talked about keeping your resume to 1 page. So what should they do if they have a lot of experience, a lot of different student organizations, and they just can't decide what to cut off?
Okay,
go ahead,
you're going to do that one?
I know you're more passionate about that one.
Yeah. There's like Tweri and I said, we can do it with 1 page. There's a trick the way we would do one page. I would switch from a chronological resume to a functional resume. And what that means is I wouldn't list, I worked in this job, and here's 5 things I did in this job, and then the next job and 5 things, and the next job and 5 things, because that would take more than 2 pages. But what I would say is, what do I want the company to know about me? And for me, it would be project management, it would be teaching, and it would be career counseling. So then I would say those 3 things, and I'd have 3 or 4 bullets under each of those that describe when I have done those and the outcomes. And then my work experience is just one-liners. I worked at the university for 15 years, worked at EDS for 25 years, was in the Air Force 10 years. And, that's 3 or 4 lines, my work experience. So you switch to a functional resume instead of a chronological one. So that's one way to do it. The other way is you don't have to go, you got to decide what you want people to know about you. And if it's the same kind of work and that you're just doing it in a different place, you don't want to be repeating yourself. So you kind of decide what story you want to tell. If it's showing growth and development and increased levels of responsibility, maybe the jobs, the earlier ones, you have less details and you save your 3 or 4 bullets for the most recent couple of them. But Tori made a really good point. If you really consciously strive to get it to 1 page, you got to eliminate some stuff. But it's okay, because also when you're eliminating stuff, you're saying, this is what's important to me. I just told you 3 things that are important to me that I would want an employer to know. I've had all sorts of jobs. I've been a systems engineer and a computer programmer, and I've developed HR programs and a variety of things. But it's like I don't care about that. That's okay. I'll tell you about that. But that's not my story. That's not my pitch. That's not my value proposition. So figure out what your value proposition is, and if you do that, you should be able to whittle it down. But Tori, you got some more points on that?
No, I think you covered it well. Just making sure that not everything you've ever done has to be included, and really thinking about what's important. What am I really trying to get across to people? And then also, if you put a little bit of it in the resume, it also gives you something else to talk about in an interview. You also don't want your resume to be verbatim of everything you would ever talk about to someone. And then another thing just to keep in mind is that one of the things that we did not add in this particular resume that we actually might for our updated one, we need to also include perhaps you can put your LinkedIn link in your resume, so that if you do have additional things that you really want to include but don't necessarily want to have it on that 1-page resume, you can have a link to your LinkedIn page, and that can certainly supplement all the other things that you might want to include. And you can then tell someone, hey, there are additional things that I've done, additional positions I've had, and they're listed on my LinkedIn page.
Really good point. And again, you guys got to have good, strong LinkedIn, because all recruiters are looking at them, even if you don't put it on the
Yes.
resume.
Absolutely. So we do have about 5 more minutes. So if you guys have any more questions, be sure that you're sending those on in. The next question we have is, we probably have quite a few maybe marketing majors in the group here. So how creative can you get with your resume, or should you stick to that basic format and template that you guys showed?
Okay, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, I was just going to say, I really think that for most people, they should probably stick to some sort of format. Whether or not you choose to use ours, we think that ours is good, and actually we came up with this because of a lot of feedback that we were getting from employers and from HR managers and from recruiting managers, and so this was the input of people that are actually looking at resumes. Now, if you are a more creative person or in a more creative field, if design or some sort of graphic arts or something of that nature is your major or is your career choice, then perhaps having something a little more creative, if that speaks to what you're trying to portray, that might be good. But if creativity is not necessarily what you're trying to portray, then don't use that as a skill in your resume. Okay, it's going to be much more important that you actually spell out the things that are important for that particular job. So if it's accounting, if it's finance, those are things that, most people that are recruiting for those types of positions are looking for people that are detail-oriented, that have accuracy skills, that perhaps have organizational and time management skills, and those are things that people are going to want to see through demonstration, not necessarily because you came up with pretty graphics or were creative with font or anything else. Those types of things can oftentimes actually be more distracting than anything else. I spent some time as an executive recruiter prior to coming to University of Michigan Dearborn, and one of the things that would kind of rule people out when I was going through a stack of resumes would be if it was just kind of over the top and again, it becomes distracting versus unique. So I say let the uniqueness in you kind of speak with what you've done versus how you format the resume. I don't know if you have anything else, Mike, to add with that one.
Oh, great answer.
Okay.
All right, so not seeing any other questions, so this one is going to be the last question for the night. That's just, how can you optimize your resume so that hiring managers are more likely to read it and contact you for an interview?
I think it's a summarization of what we said. Start by knowing what you want the recruiter to know when they read it. Assume they're going to take 8 seconds to read it. What message are they getting? It's got to be succinct, as we want it on one page. It's got to be impact driven. So use action verbs. That's why we use action verbs and not just, don't use words like responsible for. That doesn't tell me anything. What did you do? Implemented, created, built, led. Use an action verb. And be sure you include outcomes. So what? When you list something on your resume, then get really cynical about it. Not cynical isn't the right word, but critical about it and say, so what? I did that. Who cares? Oh, I see what happened. I increased profitability by 25%, or I increased customer satisfaction. If you can't quantify it, it's okay. If you can quantify it, that's good. That's better. But at least there's some kind of outcome. So have it succinct, have it organized well. Tell your story. Be sure that it's conveying those 3 or 4 or 5 things that make you special that you want them to know about you. Run it through Wordle.net. Run it through your friends, that somebody who doesn't know you. Tell me what they would think, when they read the resume. And then network like crazy so that the recruiter has already met you, knows about you, has some inkling, thinks he met you, have some kind of connection. That's going to increase probability. If you're just playing blind, putting it out there, blasting it out to 1 million people, no connections, no research on the company, trying to use one generic resume for everybody, and using a lot of general terms, and I was responsible for this, and I did all this stuff, and list 25 things that you did at a job, it's not going to work. That's not the way to do it. Be succinct, get to the point, drive home the key points, market it yourself. You're creating a flyer for your business. If you see a flyer that's just full of stuff, what do? You ignore it. You see a flyer that 3 or 4 things pop, it has value to you, you want to do it, you sign up for it. It's the same thing. These resumes are flyers for your business of I Incorporated. Market yourself in that way.
Fantastic. Any last thoughts to Ari on that?
Nope, I think that was great.
Perfect. So that is going to be all the time that we have today. I want to thank all of our participants for calling in today, as well as Mike and Tueri for their time. For any follow-up questions or conversation that any of you may have, feel free to contact them with their information that's provided on the screen. So finally, we do have some upcoming programs listed on the aksci.org website, as well as a lot of other supplemental materials and additional resources, particularly as it relates to resumes, job interviews, and anything that may be of interest to you there. Lastly, if you have any suggestions for future webinar or e-learning topics, please send them to education@aksci.org. Again, I want to thank Mike and Tueri for their time and valuable insights, and thank you all for joining us today.